There are a lot of people that kind of claim to be experts or have lots of things to say, but I think it's so important to find people that are living the life or maybe have achieved the things, whether financially, emotionally, lifestyle wise, where you'd like to go, because success, in fact, does leave clues. So if you're around those folks, you may be able to get some shortcuts to get where you'd like to go faster.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Amy Sylvis, who will share the 5 freedoms in life and how she overcame struggles from a young age. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life, to wake up energized, excited about the day, to have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want, to be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and create harmony to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. Today's quote comes from Anders Ericsson. Even the most motivated and intelligent student will advance more quickly under the tutelage of someone who knows the best order in which to learn things, who understands and can demonstrate the proper way to perform various skills, who can provide useful feedback, and who can devise practical activities designed to overcome particular weaknesses. This is what a coach does. He helps you to learn and achieve faster. I know it's worked for me. I think the problem with education is they want you to learn what they want to teach you, not what you really need to learn. And it's from somebody who actually knows what they're doing and has actually done the work, not somebody who's learned to teach the work, because they don't get it as much. And that's a problem. Before we continue, let's review last week's action step. What do you believe that's just different than what everyone else is saying? What do you do differently, and how can you take advantage of it? Different is what creates wealth. It's what separates you from the masses. You have to create your own path. And I like that. Our guest today did just that. She's overcome a lot of health obstacles from a very young age, and that's helped to shape who she is. The adversity drove her to be able to accomplish her life goals. Too often, we don't appreciate what hard times can do for us. Amy Sylvis is the founder of Sylvis Capital, a real estate firm that invests in large multifamily properties in emerging markets throughout the United States. They offer multifamily investment opportunities without the day-to-day hassles of owning real estate while generating strong returns. Let's meet Amy and learn her story. Welcome to Richer Soul, Amy Sylvis. It's great to have you join us today.
Rocky, what a pleasure this is. Thank you so much for having me today.
And I'm excited to learn from you. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
I love that question. It's such an interesting topic. You know, I was very fortunate. My parents were pretty transparent with kind of their financial situation and what their beliefs were. But it was a very classic middle class upbringing, right? Trading our time for money, save as much as possible, save for a rainy day, don't take risks. My father was and still is a manual laborer. He owns a construction company and does the physical work, but that meant that income was always, volatile, and we really needed to live quite conservatively. So That combined with schooling where despite even having my MBA, personal finance wasn't really something that was discussed a lot. So a lot of my financial education, has come from, books and podcasts and other people. I didn't really get much other than kind of the bare bones at home and at school.
But you said your parents were open about money. Is that more because they were entrepreneurial, or what was it that drove that?
I think they thought of it as, a way to teach me how to be, a person. So, I think they were open in as such of, this is what we make. This is how we save. This is the house that we bought. This is why we didn't spend, what we possibly could. Kind of details along those lines of just being really fiscally conservative and not falling into the trap of, getting into a lot of credit card debt and, over leveraging or increasing our lifestyle such that, we couldn't pay our bills.
But it sounded like that still wasn't enough information for you. You needed more.
Yes. Well, and that gets a little bit into what we were talking about is I grew up with a pretty unique circumstance where I wasn't always sure that trading my time for money was going to be available to me. So that really induced this quest for me to figure out how I could take care of myself and be self-sufficient with, a pretty severe medical challenge that I had since I was born.
Why don't you share what that's all about with the audience?
Yeah. So I was born with cystic fibrosis. I find that many people have heard that, but maybe don't know exactly what it is. But it's essentially a genetic condition that I inherited from my parents. They're both silent carriers. And in 1981, when I was born, there was no way to kind of pre-screen or prenatally screen. But essentially, when I was born, my parents were told I'd live to be 8 or 9 years old. And the cause of kind of the early mortality would be these repeated lung infections that would essentially destroy my lungs and cause them to fail. So pretty heavy. Spoiler alert, I'm 41 years old now and I'm on a miracle medication. So I don't want this to get too dark, but it really influenced and impacted kind of the way I thought and how I wanted to design my life. So those are a little bit of the basics about CF. Happy to take it where you'd like to go next, Rafi.
Well, let's talk about that because they're given this diagnosis and yet clearly you made it past 8. You made it past that. Was it because new drugs and opportunities came available or was it just luck or?
Yes, no one really knows, to be quite transparent. There's a bit of kind of self-care and home care that my parents had to do when I was younger, 2 hours of breathing treatments and kind of patting my back and my sides every morning and the same every evening. They were very dedicated to doing that. But I think it's good old fashioned blessings and luck that that also came alongside kind of that hard work. So, yeah, it was but I definitely knew from a very young age, what my battles may be. And even when I was alive, I was in the hospital for weeks and weeks on end, almost every year. And that frankly shaped my life quite a bit.
How did it shape your life?
Well, despite some of these struggles, I'm a pretty kind of independently minded, try to be as self-reliant as possible as one can be with a serious medical condition. And, as I lived through junior high, which I wasn't expecting to be, then high school, and then eventually college, the last thing I wanted to do was be a burden on my parents and have to turn to them hat in hand for financial support as an adult. And, why they'd probably smack me if they heard me say that, because of course they would be there to help me. I was really determined to find a way, despite it being difficult to hold down a W-2 job, to support myself. And for a long time, I thought it was just earn more money, save, kind of what I was taught, right? And maybe somehow that would work out if and when I had to eventually stop working because I would be too sick. But it did lead to the idea of passive income down the road. So that was kind of the origination of that.
And that's interesting. And you, clearly, each step of the way, you continue to survive and live and move forward and live your life, I guess, to the best of your ability. It doesn't sound like you ever gave up or said, what's the use?
I've definitely had my moments. There's no question about it. Life did get pretty tough. You and I spoke a little bit before we started that I had to medically retire when I was 37 years old. And for someone like me, and maybe your listeners can relate, I love keeping busy. I love feeling like I'm contributing to society. So having to go on disability, there's nothing wrong with it, but it was such a hard thing for me to come to terms with that I was simply too sick to work. And yeah, I definitely had moments, especially in the hospital with my lungs, deeply infected and no medication on the horizon. But Thankfully I had a lot of support and a lot of kind of drive that it's kept me going.
And finally, you did get medicine that kind of changed everything.
Thankfully, almost 3 years ago, November of 2019, Vertex Pharmaceuticals, the company I'm forever indebted to, created this, what I consider to be a miracle medication for cystic fibrosis. And my life completely changed truly overnight. So I feel so incredibly grateful. And it's really been the rocket fuel for me to continue to go after my goals and live life.
So let's talk about that. Now that the horizon looks much brighter, what are you up to these days?
Yes. Well, in addition to my husband and I following USC football and loving to travel internationally, I also buy large commercial properties in emerging markets throughout the U.S. and invite investors to invest passively alongside me.
When you say emerging markets, what does that mean?
So emerging markets, I think it was a term coined by Dave Lindahl. I'm not totally sure, but essentially, we like to look for markets that are starting to develop. They're starting to emerge, at the risk of using the same word: job growth, population growth, pro-business friendly environment. So essentially, we're looking for where is the next up and coming place where we may be able to serve residents or businesses with our commercial investments and that are going in the right direction economically.
So I'm guessing most of that is the southern United States.
And some of it is, yeah. That's typically where we invest. The Midwest is also extremely attractive. It's a little less "quote unquote" sexy, but I'm fine with that. There are hidden gems. I'm in Kansas City right now, for example, that wasn't on my radar, but my goodness, is there cool stuff going on there.
Well, I think everyone during COVID started to bolt out of each of the coasts. Yes. Much of it went to Florida and to Texas, but then a lot of it also went out to the Midwest, especially I think from the northern tier of California. They prefer that more open, natural type of state versus going down south.
You're spot on. I think you're exactly right.
So as part of this, you've come up with 5 freedoms, and those are most intriguing to me. Yeah. So it's a lot of what we talk about, one being financial freedom, the other being time freedom, geographic freedom, freedom of association, and freedom of purpose. So let's kind of dig into these. First off, what made you come up with the 5 freedoms and how did that come about?
I cannot take credit for coming up with them. I heard them somewhere along the way. I'm not sure who exactly to give credit for, but it is something that I've heard discussed over and over that I think really resonated with me because, and maybe you'll agree, money is great. Obviously, we all are appreciative of the money we have and what it affords us, but it really is just simply a vehicle for us to be able to design our lives and live life on our terms. And I think these 5 freedoms really encapsulate, what money can do for us and what investing can do for us.
So that kind of explains the financial freedom part of it.
Yes.
What are the other 4 then?
Well, I think the financial freedom and investing and accumulating money, to your point, allows us to live life more on our terms. So, if I am financially free and independent, then maybe I can live in other areas of the world. Like you mentioned, some folks relocated within the United States. I know some folks, including myself, plan to live overseas to experience cultures and people that are different from us. Not being tied down to a single location, but being able to be very strategic and pointed about where on this amazing planet we want to live is something that resonates with a lot of people. We can go on to the other ones, but it really is about choice. I mean, not being tied down necessarily, if you don't want to a job that forces you to be around maybe people or things that don't necessarily resonate with you or bring you meaning, contribution to the world, and what we can do there in terms of charity work and such. So I hope that makes sense. I'm answering your question.
It does. One of the things I've struggled with geographic freedom is I still do a lot in the United States. And so even I can work from anywhere technically.
Yes.
But if my time zone is more than 12 hours off, that creates time constraints that are somewhat of an issue. And so, because we've gone back and forth, my wife's like, do you want to come here? And I'm like, that's going to be kind of hard because I'm flipped over time zones. I'm like, why don't we just go to South America? Because all of South America is on the same time zone. So we can go to a variety of places, even Europe or Hawaii work, because they're still relatively within the same time zones of most of what I do.
Right. That makes perfect sense. Yeah, I think everyone has different goals in terms of what their business is and what they're comfortable with and how often they need to sync up those time zones. So, but the beauty of it is you can choose and figure out what works best for you, right?
That's correct. And you have to take the time to say what does work for me and what do I want and how do we do that? So time freedom, I guess, is a function of financial freedom, correct? When you have the money, then you get to choose how you want to spend your time.
Yes. Precisely. You and I both have had W-2 jobs and, even with a lot of flexibility, at the end of the day, you're still required to, do certain things within certain hours or be in a certain location. So, and again, there's nothing wrong with it. But for some people, they don't even realize that there is such thing as time freedom, that's possible. It can be a goal and a way that they'd like to design their lives. So I think it's important to talk about.
It is. And you were able to achieve these, it sounds like, relatively quickly, because it hasn't been that long since you technically retired.
Yes. Well, I was actually trying since the beginning of 2010 to balance the full-time job of cystic fibrosis, the full-time job of my previous career in biotech, and then also to enter into this industry. So there was about a good 10-year period of time where I had some trials and failures and strategy working, if you will. So yeah, it definitely didn't happen overnight, but all that preparation was for naught because once I had the good health, then yeah, off to the races.
And I think that's the part people don't realize. Everyone's an overnight success with 10 years of hard work behind them doing that and prepping and going through the ups and the downs. How did you keep going throughout all of that?
I think, as corny as it sounds, I think cystic fibrosis has a lot of transferable skills. If I can have the tenacity to continue to fight what was previously an illness that was inevitably going to keep getting worse year after year, I had the ability to take the hits from, failed LOIs or letters of intent or failed, almost partnerships to get into real estate. The hurdles and the obstacles are just that. They're not stop signs. They're not incredible barricades. They're just something that needs to be either leapt over or worked around. And on the other side of that is everything I can say for myself that I've ever hoped and dreamed of. So just part of the path.
Would you change it?
That's such a powerful question, Rocky. Wow. I don't know that I would. As twisted as that may sound and as painful, as difficult as it may be, it's amazing how life can shape you. And maybe you agree, but a lot of the people I know that have achieved incredible things in life had incredibly tough obstacles. And it's what made them and drove them to get there.
And I think that's true. And that's why I asked the question, because it is that drive and those obstacles that created the opportunity. Too often we want to take an easy path. And what we see a lot, especially with kids, is kids given the easy path do not achieve that success because they've never had to face adversity.
Couldn't agree with you more. I know that's a hot take in 2022, but I think you're spot on that adversity can be a tremendous gift, and to take that away, especially from children, can be robbing them of some of the best parts of life, ironically.
And so true. And it also takes away their ability to say, I did it myself.
And that's a self-esteem and confidence builder, isn't it? Right? Yeah, you can't give that to someone. It is earned through experience and trials and tribulations. So well said.
So true. So two of the others, freedom of association. What do you mean by that?
So the people that we're surrounded by, again, going back to the W-2 job that I know you and I have both had, I think we like the people we're around, hopefully, but, we don't always get to choose, right? It's just kind of where we are within an organization. And, on the other side of that, without, being financially independent, having these freedoms and being able to really choose strategically and carefully and with our heart who we're around, because we become the people that we're around. So are they Are these people givers? Do they have a passion to help the world? Are they abundantly minded? I think there are very few things that have as much of an influence on our life and our well-being as the folks that we choose to be around. So I consider that to be very powerful.
And that's the one thing I don't know that how much people look into. I think the younger generation is more open to that, is to look around at the people you're going to be working with before you take the job. Yeah. To say, do I want to be around these people? Do I want to associate with this company and their culture? Mm. Too often we're just chasing dollars instead of chasing life.
Wow, that's a quote. I like that one. I might steal that from you, Rocky. It's very true. I mean, I think this kind of survival mindset that maybe, our culture teaches us or that we fall victim to, which is, to your point, just get the money, do whatever we can, because we've been told that that really is the end goal and the ultimate, when in reality, the money is nice, but if you're not around people or don't have that purpose that drives you, it can feel pretty empty.
That it can. So the last one was freedom of purpose.
Yes. Well, I think we all understand, hopefully, I do myself, that, we're designed to give. We're designed to be happiest as humans when we're finding needs and using our unique skill set and resources to fill them. And, my husband and I are financially free. We live pretty modestly on purpose, but we're still in this business and we still do what we do because the income generated allows us to create massive impact to, the after school programs in inner city Los Angeles that we believe in, or there are 10% of people with cystic fibrosis that don't benefit from this miracle medication. And we're determined to keep funding that research so those folks aren't left behind. That purpose is greater than anything we could ever, look towards ourselves to fulfill our own needs. Helping other people is everything. And I think your ability to do that and that freedom to do that can really make life rich.
And it's having the choices, the finances, the time, the ability to bring about those changes. And it's nice when they all come together. Why did you choose real estate?
I think that passive income, of it. I think a lot of us are familiar with that purple Bible, as they call it, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Not all of my business is in multifamily. I do industrial as well. There is an incredible ability to impact the lives of people, in addition to, of course, making a profit, but housing people and providing them with safe, secure, affordable dwelling where they can really, live their life on their terms. It is so powerful and brings so much meaning. So I think, in summary, that passive income and that ability to be able to support myself financially, but then the impact together really made it incredibly attractive.
And I think that's the struggle these days for a lot of people, is to find affordable housing, regardless of whether you're trying to buy a house or rent a house. We're in times where it's no longer easily affordable as it used to be.
That's an understatement. Yes, we're really excited to find ways to be a part of the solution. We may be getting into development ourselves at some point in the near future. And thankfully, there are local governments across the U.S. that consider it to be imperative to invest and partner with the private sector to develop that. So, yes, if we can be a part of the solution and impact people at that level, it would be ideal.
Do you know how we got into such a housing shortage?
Well, it's a combination of a few things, experts tell us, and I've seen it firsthand. Local zoning, there's a lot of kind of NIMBY, not in my backyard, types of things throughout the United States. Labor and material costs have skyrocketed. So a lot of, at least in the multifamily space, that a lot of apartments that have been developed are the Class A, brand new, top of the market, because for the developers, the ROI simply isn't there on the supplies, materials, and labor unless they can charge top of the market. So, there have been a lot of disincentives, unfortunately, and hopefully the government starts to step in a bit more. We're seeing little inklings of it, but it is purely a supply issue. And of course, the millennials are the largest generation in United States history. I know we've all been told the boomers, but their children, yes. So household formation is absolutely exploding. And so we need more housing and we haven't built it.
Interesting. And it's true, because if you look at new construction, it tends to be and mostly be much larger houses, much higher end. And even the apartments are all fancy and high end. I guess you said it just doesn't make economic sense to build moderately priced homes. Or at the end of the day, if you're building something, you want to build it for maximum economic impact. So you tend to do that.
Yeah. Well, and one of the solutions, like the city of Nashville, that we're really interested in partnering with them, hopefully one day soon, they're subsidizing and saying, hey, you know what, we're going to help subsidize some of the costs. You're going to, we'll do some too, of course. But in agreement with taking some of their investment, we agree to keep rents tapped out at a certain level that makes it very affordable to kind of the average person. So I think that's a powerful example where everyone truly wins, because the renters get something that they can afford. Developers get something that makes financial sense. No one's making a killing, and that's fine. That's not something I need. We have to pay our bills and have a little bit of profit, but and then the satisfaction of knowing, you're on the contributing side to making housing more affordable and available. So I'm optimistic.
Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man Podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man Podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. I don't know how many people realize what's going on in Nashville. It has boomed unbelievably, and the cost of housing has literally skyrocketed. It has changed the entire way people there have to live, because the average person can no longer afford to live in Nashville. They're all being pushed out. And so it's an ever growing circle. And I don't believe they're not building the infrastructure, meaning highways, to support that yet, are they?
Not that I've seen. I think, to your point, it's been a tsunami that I don't think anyone saw this great migration happening that did during COVID. It was really something I don't think even the smartest demographers anticipated. So, yeah, I think Nashville is going to go through some growing pains, but it's still an incredible city. Nashville
was booming before COVID, I think.
You're right. Nope, you're absolutely right.
They were already on that trajectory. COVID just kind of supercharged it. But they had already been going to the point of doing that. And I know a lot of people down in Nashville, and it's dramatically changing things. And they have seen, because I'm thinking back 30 years ago, like they were giving stuff away in Nashville, literally downtown. It was, downtown Nashville was essentially, it was pawn shops, and it wasn't, it's not what it is now with the ice hockey rink, right, all the clubs and all the nightlife. No, that is all relatively within probably, I don't know when it started to change, but it has dramatically shifted. Nashville had a very entrepreneurial community. So if you think of Dave Ramsey, Dan Miller, who are the other guys who are down? There's a whole bunch of them that are down. It's not Darren Hardy. Dan Sullivan. Is it not Dan?
The Who Not How?
No, Michael Hyatt.
Oh.
Story Brand, the guy who runs Story Brand.
Wow.
They're all in Nashville. Like, there is literally this hub of entrepreneurial people down there that have just taken that whole area and just blown it up. It's amazing. If you look back through history, you'll see that. You can go back to Venice, Italy, and say, this is what happened in this area, or Florence, or you look at Silicon Valley, people came together, blew it up, right?
Yes.
And so when these things happen, these hubs create it. One of the things that's really cool, at least some of the people in real estate do, is they tend to look at the data. They tend to watch and say, where is the growth? Where are the U-Haul trucks going? Right? What are some of the other data that you look at to say, hey, this area is growing?
Yeah, I love that question. I'm a market research nerd, to say the least. I say that in a positive way. Some of the great research, even just the Bureau of Labor Statistics, looking at unemployment, the local Chamber of Commerce or Economic Development Committee, they can tell you what jobs are on the horizon, what companies may be relocating. The Milken Report is something that is actually published by the Milken Institute annually, sometimes semi-annually, and they rank cities in the United States and compare them year over year to see who's growing, what proportion of folks' rent is going toward, or their income is going towards rent, the type of jobs, are they technology based, are they research and development based, which we all know those sectors tend to grow and do well. So that's another great report that I always keep a very, very close eye on. And of course, just simple things like population growth. We love when the census comes out and we're able to see, compared to the United States average, is this city growing faster? Is it growing slower? What does that look like?
And it's funny because everyone tends to look locally and not realize how much things are changing globally. And also to realize there's a lot of parts of the United States where real estate is still super, super cheap.
Yes.
And opportunities are abound.
I think you're spot on. The phrase live where you want and invest where it makes sense really resonates with me. I'm in Los Angeles. I love it here. My family's here. You can catch me dead investing out here. It's a little bit of a wild place to invest. And, it's okay if it's for some people. But I think that's the whole point, or one of the many reasons why scale makes so much sense in our business as well, because we can hire third-party property managers to manage, far away from where we are and really take advantage of those trends, as you mentioned, because just because we live in a certain place doesn't necessarily mean that it's a great place to invest.
No, I think a lot of times, and that's been the common question that I heard for years, in not even just investing, but owning, because a lot of the people were New York City or in San Fran. And the question is, does it make sense to rent versus buy? And for many of those cities, it actually made more sense to rent because your cost of living was considerably less. Like, it didn't make sense to buy those properties and rent them out because your rents wouldn't cover it. So people were planning on appreciation. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. Yep. You don't know.
Yep. That's the gamble.
That's the gamble. It goes up and down. And so what is some of the parts of the country right now that you're seeing booming that other people might not have heard about or thought about?
I was on stage out here in Los Angeles a few weeks ago at a multifamily event, and I was talking about Huntsville, Alabama, and I felt the collective room's head explode because in Los Angeles, Alabama isn't something people, typically think about, good, bad, or indifferent. The northern part of Alabama, which is where Huntsville is, has an incredibly large population of PhDs, has a very low cost of living. The United States Space Force is relocating there. The FBI is bringing thousands upon thousands of jobs there. So there's a lot of science, technology, and government, and they tend to be a very progressive, welcoming of people immigrating to their area in Huntsville. So I think a little bit different than people may stereotypically think of the area, but we own there. We're seeing firsthand the population growth, the income growth, and we're very excited to be there and want other people to know about the area as well.
Are there a lot of universities there that drove that, or is it just?
So NASA was originally there, the Redstone Arsenal. So they don't, and NASA isn't there anymore doing that, but that was part of what drove it. University of Alabama, Huntsville is there, not the Nick Saban, Tuscaloosa, Roll Tide football team. They're in a different city, but Yeah, they're definitely a university. And I think just strategically located, it's 2 hours south of Nashville. Speaking of Nashville, it's 2 hours west of Atlanta. So there's really this kind of corridor effect happening in that area that is really driven that growth as well.
And I know Georgia has been a go-to area for a lot of multifamily investors. Yes. And single family. They're picking up stuff left and right throughout Georgia because it was reasonable and they could do that. Interesting.
Yes. Yeah.
I'll have to take a look and see what's going on down there.
Let me know. Always happy to help.
You mentioned that you were at a conference, I guess, in LA with a whole bunch of syndicators and so forth. So what are you hearing? I mean, clearly the markets are changing. The Fed has been continually raising interest rates, and I don't think people realize until they go looking, if you're going to get a mortgage today, your payment is probably 50% more than it was a couple of years ago. That's how dramatically the cost of housing has gone up from interest rates. You're clearly very involved with this. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think's happening in economic policy.
Such a great question. And to your point, it's on everybody's mind because not only in the single family space, but in the multifamily space, the cost of capital or the interest rates on our debt have almost doubled. So one would expect that the cost of buying a property would go down, but believe it or not, it's maybe budged around 15% at the most. So we're in this very interesting space where the fundamentals of multifamily have not changed. There's still this massive housing shortage. There's still a lot of household formation because the largest generation in U.S. history is moving out of parents' houses, especially after COVID and renting and buying their own place. So we are in a really interesting spot where we're waiting to see what the Fed's next move is. Historically speaking, when the Fed looks to tame inflation, they hike rates pretty quickly. Not as quickly as this, but they generally do. They're intentionally inducing a recession, and they'll probably cut rates soon after, kind of a mountain peak, if you will, sharp up, sharp down. And I get the sense that a lot of folks, especially in multifamily, are looking to see when those rate cuts may come so they can jump back into the market.
And that's interesting. One of the things that kind of kept me away from current deals is they were originally priced with the original interest rates. And when you reprice based on new interest rates, some of these deals don't make economic sense anymore. They're money losing, most of them. So does that then create opportunity when some of these deals essentially end up blowing up and somebody comes in and buys them at pennies on the dollar and brings them down at the end of the day?
Yes. I think there are always reasons why people have to sell. Business partnerships go wrong. People have health challenges, deaths in the family. There are always reasons to sell. We've only been in this increased interest rate environment, around 6 months or so, maybe. What month is it? October. And price discovery is very real and is very typically takes 6 to 9 months. So there will be people that have to sell. At the same time, there are folks that understand that they're likely going to have to ask less for their property. And if they don't need to sell, they're deciding to hold on because the truth is most people have debt at a rate that's significantly lower than inflation, right? Some argue that inflation is 8%. Some people that use the metric of how inflation used to be measured in the 80s, they say it's 15, 16, 17%. So there are some nice cash flowing properties and sellers are not eager to cut their prices. So to your point, it's one of the reasons I got into industrial as well. Things are at a little bit of a different place, a different part of the cycle, but I think we're still in a very favorable negative interest rate environment, which is great for us.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. These things will continue to change and there is always sales going, even when interest rates hit 18% way back in the day, houses were still selling, clearly not as easily. But real estate moves, and the people who bought the houses at 18% actually they just kept refining on the way down. And so you were able to buy lower on the property side, which that has not occurred yet. People the stock market swings in a snap of a finger. Real estate has a slower curve. People need to get used to it. And to me, I've always seen probably 1 to 2 to 3 years behind the curve sometimes, depending on how the recession plays out and so forth.
Absolutely. And even if the Fed never cuts rates, I mean, they're still a little bit below kind of their average and where they usually are. There will still be opportunities. Prices inevitably will adjust and we will get back to a new normal, to use an overused term. But oftentimes some of the best opportunities are available when folks have their pencils down, are nervous about, what may come and the uncertainty. So I know for us, we were completely all in during COVID, which, as everyone remembers, Q2 of 2020, GDP plummeted by 30% quarter over quarter. Unemployment was above 10%. It was a wild time with a lot of uncertainty, no vaccines. So we're very glad we bought then, and we're still glad we bought now, because there's always opportunity.
And I think that's the thing. There is always opportunity. Things are always moving and selling, and you just have to pivot and continue to go with that. See what works for you and how it all comes together.
Yes, precisely.
So we always like to get people to take action. What's an action step people can do this week to move forward in their life? One of my best pieces of advice is a morning routine. I don't know. Some people aren't morning people. Some people aren't, willing to wake up maybe an extra 10 or 15 minutes. But I would really encourage folks to maybe do something first thing in the morning, like to journal or listen to a podcast or something, just to get their mindset on what their goals are for the day and how they can just grow themselves even incrementally. It can be a great thing to commit to, easier said than done, perhaps, but I think that's a great action step to take, because you'll be amazed at how much it can transform the rest of your day. It's true. I get most of my creative work done in the morning. That's when I prefer to do it. Well, it's because it's before everything has started bothering me, and, you're fresh and you get it down. And honestly, in order to do that, and that's what I keep sometimes tell my wife, I'm like, I got to get to bed at night so that I can be up in the morning. So your evening routine pretty much drives your morning routine as well. So they all go together, and taking those steps to figure out what works for you. I know there's other people who are much better at night. God bless them. If that works for you, that works for you. Make it work to your advantage.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, as we intentionally design our lives, maybe you're interested in going after those 5 freedoms, figuring out ways to intentionally take steps towards that. Maybe it's even just dreaming. Maybe it's 15 minutes in the morning where you get to journal what your ideal life might be like, allowing yourself to think outside the box and find ways that you want to live your life. It's a great place to start as you move towards those goals.
So true. It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
I think a culture teaches us maybe the opposite, that, we should be looking out for ourselves and what can we get. But it is amazing how much we can receive when we really focus on what other people need and how we can fulfill those needs by giving.
And they've done psychological studies, and it proves that out, that giving actually creates more happiness than receiving does.
Yes, spot on. It's how we're designed.
What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
I think I've been a kind of a rugged individualist, maybe by default. A lot of my health challenges, no one could do my breathing treatments for me. No one could go to the doctor for me. A lot of really important things in my life, I had no choice but to do for myself. And so I would apply that, especially early on as an entrepreneur. Needs to get done, do it myself. And what an inflection point I had in my business journey when I decided to get with a team, form a team, have business partnerships, and talk about going further, faster. My goodness, that's an understatement. So yeah, I think just being a team player and understanding that there are so many beautiful synergies we can have with other folks, whether in business or in life. So wish I would have known that sooner.
And that's so true. And it's hard to let go. And for a lot of people, I think it's hard to find a team.
Yes.
It takes time and you have to get out, but you take the first step and then you just keep going. And little by little, you get there.
Yes.
If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Oh, surround yourself with people that are where you'd like to go. I think there are a lot of social media. There are a lot of people that kind of claim to be experts or have lots of things to say, but I think it's so important to find people that are living the life or maybe have achieved the things, whether financially, emotionally, lifestyle-wise, where you'd like to go, because success, in fact, does leave clues. So if you're around those folks, you may be able to get some shortcuts to get where you'd like to go faster.
I don't think Charlie Munger and Bill Gates hang out on social media.
Probably not. They're probably more in real life type folks. Yeah.
They're out making things happen. And I think there's a lot of people in the world that are just hidden away that you don't know, that are actually out there just cranking out the work and making it happen. So,
Oh, well said.
Look for them. Where can people find you and connect and learn more about your programs?
Sure. So sylviscapital.com. I'm sure you'll put the unique spelling of my last name in the show notes. That's my website. I'm also very active on LinkedIn. Try really hard to add value, education, information to folks that follow me. So would love to connect with you there. Send me a connection request, and I look forward to getting to know you.
And we'll put that all in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, this is a delight. Thank you so much again for having me. I really appreciate it.
I love how Amy overcame the struggles she faced and how it fueled her success. Have you thought about real estate? There's so many ways to get involved, but the one core is that you have to look at the numbers. From the demographic trends and the economic trends in that particular area that you are, and what do those numbers and cash flow look like in the property in question? It's easy to get carried away. And while people make great money in real estate, many people lose it, usually through over-leverage or cash flow issues. First step, do the math. This week's action step, create a morning routine and spend time getting in focus on your bigger goals in life. Remember, a good morning starts with a good evening. We all get one life. Choose how you want to live yours. Pick what you want. Make it abundant and go do it. Speaking of that, next week I've got Melissa Hughes on how to live rich and spread wealth. If you enjoyed today's episode, do you know someone else who might? Would you do me a favor and share it? I'd appreciate that. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.